This is a great lap by Lewis Hamilton. Another best of anybody in the middle sector. He's flying. Lewis Hamilton has his 6th pole position of the season. It's 2 in a row.
Qualifying was completed and pole position claimed in the style of a world champion. But now could Britain's Lewis Hamilton claim the world title and the place in sporting history that was so tantalisingly close. Turn that pole position into race victory here in the Chinese Grand Prix and he will be world champion. Indeed, he will clinch the title if he simply finished ahead of Fernando Alonso and Kimi Raikkonen. This had the potential to be one of British motorsport's greatest days. Commentators for the Chinese Grand Prix here in Shanghai, Martin Brundle and James Allen, after James has taken you through the grid.
So it's the 6th pole position of this 2007 season for Lewis Hamilton, his 11th time on the front row. He's got Kimi Raikkonen right alongside him. Through to row 2, Felipe Massa and Fernando Alonso, the 9th time this season that Hamilton's out-qualified him. Coulthard and Ralf Schumacher make up row 3. Row 4, Mark Webber in the 2nd of the Red Bulls alongside BMW's Nick Heidfeld. Robert Kubica was out-qualified by his teammate by 17 1/1000ths of a second. He's got Jenson Button alongside him on row 5. Row 6, Tonio Liuzzi and Jarno Trulli, a bit out of sorts here in China. Renault were terrible in qualifying, Heikki Kovalainen 13th alongside Anthony Davidson. Then it's Nico Rosberg, again the Williams team misfiring here, and Rubens Barrichello making up row 8. Row 9, Sebastian Vettel, moved back 5 places for blocking another car. He's got Giancarlo Fisichella with him. It's Wirtz and Sato making up row 10. And right at the back, the Spikers are not really on form here. Sutil and Yamamoto.
Let's take a quick look at the track. The Shanghai International Circuit is 5.4 kilometres long, that's 3 1/3 miles, a 56-lap race. With the latest groove tyres and 2.4-litre V8 engines, 95 seconds is a hot lap. Turns 1, 2, 3 and 4 are virtually a circle and very tight. The midfield needs a lot of downforce and high-speed corners, then an enormously long back straight.
Hello everybody. Well, they say sport doesn't build characters, it reveals them. And that's certainly very true this season of Lewis Hamilton. He arrived at the first race, barely 22 years old, and has revealed himself to be a man with the spirit of Bobby Moore, Steve Redgrave, Martin Johnson and Jackie Stewart. An elite group of British-born winners. The field forming up, the 2 Spikers at the back, Ron Dennis. He's been through a roller coaster of emotions throughout the season. He's about to have another hour and 3/4 of them. When the 5 lights go out, the 56th lap Chinese Grand Prix will be underway. Lewis Hamilton on the right, Kimi Raikkonen on the left with Alonso behind him. 5 lights. It's go! Great start by Raikkonen. He's pulling alongside Lewis Hamilton, who's also got a good start. Massa has got himself in front of Alonso and swung out wide. They go into turn 1 and in grid order. Alonso's looking around the outside though of Massa, looking for the additional grip out there. And Hamilton leads it. Raikkonen is second. It's wheel barging between Alonso and Massa, and Alonso takes the place from Massa, and Ralf Schumacher from 6th place on the grid has spun out.
Yeah, Schumacher getting tagged, I'd imagine. It was so close for Alonso to go round as well. Massa's coming back up the inside of him into turn 6. Alonso suddenly spots him and he's back down to 4th place. Meanwhile, Hamilton with a nice gap up front to Kimi Raikkonen, and a good fight then, 3rd, 4th, 5th. David Coulthard getting away very well in the Red Bull 2, holding his grid position. So only Ralf Schumacher then with a problem in the first half of the lap. It's 3 abreast into turns 8 and 9.
Hamilton leads, Raikkonen is second, Alonso's 3rd. Is he, or Massa's back in front of him 3rd? Alonso's 4th, Coulthard 5th, Heidfeld 6th, then 7th is Webber, 8th Liuzzi, 9th Kubica, 10th is Kovalainen, down to 11th is Jenson Button, as through comes Sebastian Vettel, one of the heroes of Fuji, who then blotted his copybook by smashing into Mark Webber, but Vettel on the move as well, up to 13th then.
Now we'll see how fast the Ferraris are in a straight line. Will Raikkonen cruise up to the back of the McLaren? At the moment it doesn't look that way, and Hamilton keeps his advantage down there. We've seen the Ferrari has been very quick. He did gain a little bit. If he gets anywhere near the gearbox of Hamilton, surely he'll have enough straight line speed. And Toro Rosso going up the inside of Mark Webber in the Red Bull. Certainly they're all treading very cautiously. They learned very much from 7 days ago that to finish first you must finish, and it's all about surviving this afternoon.
Hamilton, Raikkonen, Massa, Alonso, the front four. Coulthard has held off Nick Heidfeld, who's having a great battle with Tonio Liuzzi in the Toro Rosso over 6th and 7th places. Just behind them is Mark Webber in the second of the Red Bull cars in 8th place. And Robert Kubica, who is running in 9th place. We've got contact there between a Honda and a Super Aguri. Looks like Rubens Barrichello is one of the cars. He was racing against Takuma Sato and Anthony Davidson, so I'm not sure which of those two it was who spun, but they were scrapping over 14th place. We're riding on board then with the reigning world champion. How much longer will he be the champion for? You see the rain pouring off the onboard camera as we hit almost 200 miles an hour before hitting the brakes into the 50 mile an hour in the dry hairpin at turn 14. The rain coming down very heavily now here in Shanghai. This is only the end of the second lap as Wirtz gets defensive on Takuma Sato, scrapping over 16th place here. Just look at that rain pouring down. Here's the restart.
Perfect start from Hamilton away from pole position. Alonso away well too. And he then fancies a run right around the outside of what is effectively a complete circle before they get to turn 4. And Hamilton with the comfort zone of being able to choose his line, speed, braking point. And this is on board with Fernando Alonso. He fancies at least one of those Ferraris around the outside while they're just finding out what they've got underneath them, especially with their wide mirrors. Maybe the drivers don't have such good peripheral vision on that car. And there's the tag from Massa. And Alonso then right up the inside of Raikkonen, but he's tight on that corner. He'll get more traction control cutting in and does not get the acceleration. And that gave Massa a chance to come back at Fernando Alonso. And as we now know, this is the contact between Davidson and Barrichello, synchronized spinning.
We have seen between the Ferrari and the McLaren that the McLaren has tended to be the better wet weather car, hasn't it? You think back to the Nürburgring where Alonso was able to pass Massa at the very end of the Grand Prix, and other places too, obviously Fuji. The McLaren works well here, and at the moment Hamilton's using that advantage. Again, another half second on that last lap.
It seems to me that the McLaren has more mechanical grip, and the Ferrari, watching Mount, so we're talking small amounts, and the Ferrari has more aerodynamic grip. So as you say, in these conditions, it's paying dividends for them, and Alonso beginning to get up ahead of steam.
This rain is going to ease off in 5 minutes. It's not going to be long.
Yeah, within 2 minutes we went from a track that looked like it might be shaping up to dry up a little bit to, hang on a minute, are these tyres going to clear enough water? The intermediate tyres, as I prefer to call them, are brilliant tyres. I have driven them, and they're just extraordinary in how dry dry the track can be to how wet the track can be, and still that tyre can bridge the gap. And so that gives the drivers quite a big window before they have to take any kind of gambles on a tyre change.
Yes, but how long will it stay dry for? Because if you look at a chart, which we have up here in the commentary box, of the weather patterns over the last 3 hours, and you look at the wet-dry situation, it looks like a mountain range. It's peaks and troughs, peaks and troughs. It rains, then it stops for a while, then it rains again. I wouldn't be at all surprised it doesn't carry on like that for the next hour and a half to 2 hours of this Grand Prix. Alonso, though, is closer now to the back of Massa than he's been so far. He's in his groove. He knows he has to finish in front of Lewis Hamilton to take at least 2 points off him if he's going to take this championship battle on to Brazil in a fortnight's time. He is not quite the beaten man that some people in the paddock think him to be, although clearly yesterday afternoon he did have quite an outburst when he qualified in 4th place, and stories of knocking doors off their hinges in the McLaren offices, hurling his helmet across the room. Certainly all the emotion pouring out. He's a very frustrated man, Fernando Alonso, but we've seen many times before that fighter spirit in him.
Well, Hamilton took 7 tenths, or added 7 tenths to his lead on the last lap. In the first sector of this lap, already he's added another 7 tenths. So he's pulling quickly away from Kimi Raikkonen. He doesn't look like he's wringing his neck. He looks like he's got a sensible approach to the racetrack. And indeed, it looks like Raikkonen's having to push that a little bit harder. So he's a second up then in the first 2 sectors. Is Lewis Hamilton over second place man Raikkonen, Massa 3rd, Alonso 4th, Coulthard 5th, Liuzzi doing very well for Toro Rosso in 6th, then Heidfeld, Webber 8th for Red Bull, Kubica 9th for BMW, then Kovalainen 10th. This then are the 2 Williams squabbling over 15th place.
Yeah, Rosberg in front of Wirtz, so Rosberg taking that place away from Wirtz. But Tonio Liuzzi is the man to keep an eye on. We're riding on board with his teammate Sebastian Vettel up behind Heikki Kovalainen. Liuzzi then did pass Nick Heidfeld. We didn't see it, but it's happened in the last lap or so, and he's now setting off after David Coulthard. Hamilton, though, looking comfortable at the front. 2.5 seconds in front as Vettel makes a nice pass on Kovalainen, but Kovalainen comes back on him. This the battle for 10th place. On the left-hander, back onto the pit straight here. Vettel very cautious through there.
Kubica shaping up for a look at Mark Webber then, 8th and 9th. Webber stays on the racing line. Kubica moves to the inside and really takes the high ground in the braking zone. And Webber really has to yield that position. He'll try and switch back underneath him, but the BMW's got too much grip.
Yep, terrific front end on this BMW, just turns in exactly as the drivers want it to. Hamilton sets a new fastest lap, 1:46.0. The track is drying out now, and he's using it to his advantage. He's added his almost over a second over Kimi Räikkönen now, the gap out to 4 seconds in just the space of a lap. Massa third, Alonso fourth. Taking another look at that pass by Kubica. It was textbook stuff, really. Lewis Hamilton is in the lead and extending that lead over Kimi Räikkönen. A podium with Alonso behind him on the finish this afternoon would give him the World Championship. We're riding on board with Sebastian Vettel, who's battling with Heikki Kovalainen over 10th place. It's Hamilton, Räikkönen, Massa, Alonso, and Vettel goes down the inside into the hairpin. That is the passing place of choice here. So far this afternoon, we saw Robert Kubica passing Mark Webber just a moment ago to that very same spot. And now Kubica is all over the back of his teammate, the BMW, Nick Heidfeld, in 7th place. Hamilton, Räikkönen, Massa, Alonso, Coulthard the front 5. Then it's Liuzzi, Heidfeld, Kubica, Webber in 9th, Vettel and Kovalainen 10th and 11th. Jenson Button is 13th, and having had a collision earlier on, Anthony Davidson is down in 20th place. The wind appears to be still about the same as it was earlier on, but the track is definitely drying out. The lap time's tumbling as it does so. Lewis Hamilton that last time through a mid 1:45. Again, 0.8 of a second faster than Kimi Räikkönen in the Ferrari, who now falls 5.2 seconds behind him. Fernando Alonso is 11 seconds behind Hamilton after only 8 racing laps. And we're looking at an onboard with Jarno Trulli, who's in 12th place, having a scrap with Heikki Kovalainen, who's just been passed by Sebastian Vettel. And it looks as though Trulli's wheel to wheel with him, the back of the circuit that's going through towards turn 11. I'm sure you'll be wondering why Hamilton is able to pull away so much from Räikkönen. Well, there's all kinds of reasons for why Hamilton is pulling away. As we say, the McLaren is perhaps a slightly faster car in wet conditions. Hamilton clearly feels inspired. He said yesterday after qualifying, he's nothing particularly going through his mind. His mind is very calm, very still.
There is more rain coming, so look after your tyres if you can.
More rain coming, so look after your tyres if you can, is the message from Red Bull to Mark Webber. Currently in 9th place. Webber getting right up onto the curves in response. And this is pretty much what Hamilton needed, really, wasn't it? A consistent pattern of a track staying wet and readable conditions, basically.
Here's a replay then of the Williams in the background, top of your screen. Ralf Schumacher and Nico Rosberg. Schumacher takes that one around the outside and takes the position.
There is Anthony Davidson, his second incident at the Grand Prix. Looks like the engine's gone. Cut out anyway. Jenson Button, 10th on the grid, drops down to 13th as Rosberg has a go. Try and take that place away from him. There he goes.
Much greater straight line speed, obviously came off that turn 13 better, and no answer there for Jenson because Rosberg gets the turning point. Jenson tries to switch back underneath. We're hearing that it's starting to rain again, but again Rosberg has got the racing line into the final turn. A great scrap going on there. Kovalainen and Rosberg now, Button and Ralf Schumacher, Alex Wurz quickly coming onto the back of that pack too.
As McLaren get ready for Hamilton, the race leader on lap 15, so a pretty early pit stop for him. Kimi Räikkönen will take over the lead of this race. The margin at the moment is just under 9 seconds as Lewis Hamilton comes down to the into the pit lane, and Ted Kravitz is there.
It is a couple of laps early than the paddock wisdom had it. They had that we were actually going to come in. Lewis was going to come in on lap 17, but isn't that significant? They're keeping on the tyres for Lewis Hamilton. A decent slug of fuel, a straight two-stopper for Lewis, but they're keeping on that set of tyres. They're getting into a nice, warm, hot working temperature.
Well, he was 29 seconds ahead of fifth place man Coulthard, so he should get out of the pits and not be in traffic. But I tell you what, I hope it doesn't rain too hard with that front left tyre. We've seen this before where they let the, and there he is, he's come out ahead of David Coulthard, so that's worked out nicely in terms of not getting in the traffic.
David, we think the conditions will be the same through moderate rain. What do you think about the tyres? I think you'll be reading again before the stop, change the tyre. If it doesn't, leave them.
If it rains again before my pit stop, change the tyres. If it doesn't, leave them. That's what Hamilton's just done. But did you see how bald his left front tyre was? That's the tyre that takes all the pain around here. There's a couple of very, very long, constant radius and opening out radius right-hand corners that puts all the load on the front left tyre. Now you can see it from Kimi Räikkönen's perspective as he comes out of one of those very corners. How's his front left tyre looking?
Well, when they wear down, what generates heat in a tyre is when the rubber moves around, the tread blocks move around in the wet and extremely wet tyres. So by allowing them to go down, they act more like the slick or dry tyre, give you more grip. We've seen it in the past where even on groove tyres, they've tried to get rid of all of the grooves to simply give them more rubber on the surface in these drying conditions. Still, Lewis feeling the need to cool those intermediate tyres, but if it rains heavily, he'll have to be coming in.
The idea Ferrari had yesterday was to send Massa out on a light strategy, light fuel load, to try and grab the pole position, to try and control the field. Massa made a mistake on his qualifying lap, and that's why he was third and not on pole position. But we believe that Räikkönen is carrying more fuel. Massa too leaves the same set of tyres on. And the $100 million question now is how far into this Grand Prix can Kimi Räikkönen go? But of course, let's not forget that even if Räikkönen wins this race, as long as Hamilton is on the podium and Alonso's behind him, he's still the world champion.
See, it hasn't worked out in terms of traffic for Felipe Massa. He's now behind the Toro Rosso of Tonio Liuzzi, but he's got a full tank of fuel, and they'll be watching those rain clouds very, very carefully indeed. And Ralf Schumacher there shaping up against Kovalainen. Kovalainen wrong-footed out of the last corner behind the back marker. Ralph's gone very wide, but that tends to lead you quite nicely into turn 3. And there was a spiker in there somewhere, and Kovalainen continues to go backwards through the field. So Alonso due in then, so he didn't go too much further than his teammate Hamilton into the pit lane with extra caution. That's concrete with some water on top of it, and it becomes a bit of a slick, a bit of an emulsion. You have to be extra careful approaching your pit garage in those conditions.
So Hamilton took on 6.8 seconds. He was stationary for. That's how much fuel he took on. 6.9 for Massa, 7.7 for Alonso. So he's fueled slightly longer. And he comes out. Where does he come relative to Massa? Not quite close enough to Felipe Massa. He was trailing him by a couple of seconds before the pit stops, and he's still trailing him. Here he comes then, Kimi Räikkönen shortcuts the entrance into the pit lane. He was nearly 9 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton before Hamilton made his first pit stop here this afternoon. He's gained about a second a lap on him, and since then, so it is going to be closer, as Martin says, but he comes sliding to a halt. The Iceman, as he's known. He's racing for victory here this afternoon, clearing those mirrors of all the spray. Right out on the edge of the side pods of the Ferrari. There is Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be close between the two of them.
Yeah, Hamilton's at full speed, of course, but as we thought, Räikkönen much closer, but not close enough. And Hamilton steams into turn 1. But I tell you what, Räikkönen left his pit garage there literally as the nozzle was coming out of the refuel. That was either perfect or lucky, I'm not sure which, but it was to the split second.
As Coulthard pits from what was third place, he'll drop back behind Massa and Alonso. We've still got a prediction from race control of rain in the area. It's going to come on, but obviously a lot of people gambling here on a big result. Lewis Hamilton, though, will be thinking about what this man is doing. Fernando Alonso, his main championship rival, currently he's 20 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton on the racetrack, but he's all over the back of Felipe Massa in the battle for third place. And a lot could change here in the second half of this Grand Prix. Story of the first half as Alonso goes around the outside. Massa resists, and Alonso tries to cut back up the inside to take this third place away from him. And that's the first time that he's been able to do that. They had a great scrap off the start line, but ultimately it was Massa that held it. Massa dives into the pit lane then for new tyres.
Yeah, so the first of the big four then in is Felipe Massa, just as he'd lost third place. And unless it rains in the next few minutes, spot of rain on that camera as he's coming in. So that means we've got Button, Webber, Kubica, Wirtz, and now Massa out on the dry tyres. And of course they always have to make an adjustment for the two types of tyre. The wet tyre raises the ride out of the car, and you need less front downforce. You need less front downforce in wet conditions than you do in dry, so they have to make an automatic, predetermined adjustment.
Meanwhile, Kimi Raikkonen has got the gap to Lewis Hamilton down to just 3.1 seconds. Fernando Alonso's 20 seconds behind Lewis Hamilton on the racetrack. Massa just adjusting his driving and his feel to this greasy track on the, don't forget, the dry tyres that he's just put on. So he and Kubica are also on the dry tyres out there. Will it work for them? It's a big gamble.
Ted has some further news on the tyres as Massa struggles to get up to speed.
It's just started fine raining in here, and that's what McLaren were waiting for, just to see if the rain came, just as David Coulthard has come in to put dry tyres on. I bet he's going to be regretting that decision in a second, but the other guys on dry tyres, Wirtz, Kovalainen, Button, Webber, Ralph, Barrichello, Fisichella and Sato.
And Ralf Schumacher has his second spin of the race, and something hit a camera there down at the exit of turn 15.
A spike I can see out of the window.
But that's Lewis Hamilton, and there is Kimi Raikkonen. He got the gap down. There's the spiker that's crashed. It's right in front of the pit lane. I hope it's not blocking the pit lane. Meanwhile, at the front, Alonso's run wide there, the final corner. At the front, Hamilton has got Raikkonen now breathing right down his neck. So Lewis Hamilton had a very slow lap that last time, a 1:50. Raikkonen was 3 seconds faster than him, and this is the net result. The rain is now falling here in Shanghai, and there's going to be real pressure here. Hamilton runs wide. This is for the lead of the race, and they are championship contenders as well. Raikkonen has the momentum. Hamilton puts up a very stiff fight though and retains the lead.
I half wondered if Lewis, I don't think it's in his makeup to just let the Ferrari go. He doesn't need to fight with Raikkonen. What he does need to do, I'd have thought, is come in and get some inters, but even that's a gamble. We know that the intermediate tyres that he's on, come in to get dry tyres rather, we know that the intermediate's on are almost slick, but they're not going to give him any grip in these conditions. Does he need a fresh set of wet tyres, or is it worth absolutely just staying out on these? Of course, Webber has now come in and gone. He's got rid of his dry tyres. These guys are going to get rid of inters for inters.
The crucial thing here is that both of these drivers are on the same tyre. They're both using very worn-out wet tyres at the moment. With none of the men who've changed to dry tyres are a threat to them. Felipe Massa is a minute behind them on the road. He's the first of the men on the dry tyre. Here's Raikkonen as Hamilton goes off onto the wet line. So the crucial thing is, what does Hamilton do relative to Raikkonen? And of course Alonso, who is 20 seconds behind this pair. We've got yellow flags waving for that incident with the spiker earlier on. So no overtaking, of course, allowed under yellow flag zone. And that is the Toyota of Ralf Schumacher. Hamilton doesn't get a good drive out of that final corner. Raikkonen pulls alongside him, side by side here. And Hamilton once again resists and sweeps into turn one, retaining that lead.
Super bravery as Rosberg recovers from the gravel. And these are difficult times for all of the drivers out there. They're on a range of tyres, none of which are absolutely right for these conditions, unless you've just happened to have moved onto newish intermediate. But Lewis doesn't want to give that lead up. He's fighting for the World Championship. He doesn't really need to take too many risks with Kimi Raikkonen, but he just doesn't want to yield.
Well, the problem here is that the pace is completely gone. They're on the, as I say, rather bald, wet tyres. The rain appears to be falling lightly at the moment here, and Hamilton is dancing on a knife edge. His lap times are in the 1:55s. He's 10 seconds a lap slower than he was when he was pulling away earlier on from Kimi Raikkonen. Raikkonen seems to have the advantage in these conditions.
Right.
He pulls again alongside him, and Hamilton's going to have to yield this time. Through goes Raikkonen into the lead. Hamilton Hamilton down into second place. He's still 17 seconds, though, ahead of Fernando Alonso, who's now behind him in third place. So the lead changes here in Shanghai. The new leader is Kimi Räikkönen.
Yes, and Räikkönen's much faster through this long corner onto the back straight, as you can see now. And Hamilton will have no chance to come back to him. He's now got to start thinking about where the others are for the championship. Hamilton goes in too deep into what I believe is turn 8. Indeed it is. Here's 9. And Räikkönen has the racing line. Hamilton having to yield 3 abreast down the pit straight. What's going to happen here? Two Renaults, and that's just about frightened Nico Rosberg off the track. Those advertising hoardings seem as slippery as anything out there, and this is what happened. He's in a Renault sandwich effectively, and the one on the inside, they both make it through, and wow, just hanging on there through the apron, but Rosberg didn't make it.
Fisichella came out the best of those 3 then, as Ralf Schumacher commiserates with his Toyota mechanics. Just one more race for him then with this team before he walks away, possibly away from Formula 1 as well, who knows.
Alonso is 2 seconds a lap faster than Lewis Hamilton. He's in third place at the moment. It's Hamilton who, of course, they were losing time fighting each other. But at the moment, of course, Lewis has got a different challenge. He cannot afford to spin that car or take too many risks. But at the same time, he's got to keep the pace up.
Well, he knows that Räikkönen is now ahead of him as he comes to lap the Toyota of Jarno Trulli. And he's not too worried about Räikkönen winning this race. If Hamilton finishes second, as long as Alonso finishes behind him, he's still going to be the world champion. So now he's thinking only of his mirrors. But look, Trulli almost unlaps himself. They're very close to each other. And Hamilton is really struggling. These wet weather tyres, we saw the baldness of that front left when he made his pit stop. He chose to leave the same tyres on, and they are basically just worn out. Räikkönen seems to be able to handle it better.
I hope he's not down to the canvas on his right rear tyre, Lewis Hamilton, but the car that just repassed him is a Toyota on dry tyres. Look at the white groove around. So Jarno Trulli quicker on dry tyres, and here comes Alonso chasing Hamilton. He is on those worn down intermediates though. Surely Hamilton's got to think about coming in the pits this time around, but which tyres would you put on? It would have to be the dries at the moment. And a picture then of Hamilton. It just looks, I don't know if there's a piece of paper stuck on his right rear or if it's down to the canvas. Hamilton getting very, very wide in turns 1 and 2. He's struggling for grip out there. He's got to come in. He's got, I think he's got some delamination on that right rear tyre. Surely the team have seen that.
Well, we've seen this before as his teammate Fernando Alonso comes into view. Lewis Hamilton had tyre problems before in Turkey. It cost him a lot of points. It could cost him a hatful of points and the possibility of walking away from this race as the world champion, because his teammates sense an opportunity here. Ted Kravitz, what have you got?
McLaren have seen that, but they're just waiting until they absolutely have to bring Lewis Hamilton in. They're also waiting, Hamilton's engineers, just waiting to see what Alonso does. As in now, they come into the pits, and whose tyres have they been preparing? No, it's Alonso's tyres. They've got Alonso's tyres out in the pit lane. This is very strange. We'll see what they do at the moment. It's the dry tyre that they should be on, because everybody who's come in to put Inters on again has gone much slower. And as you saw, Jenson Button is out there. He's doing a good job.
Thank you, Ted. Into the pits anyway comes Lewis Hamilton. He goes straight on into the gravel trap. Can he keep the wheels spinning? Can he get some momentum going? No, he can't. It's all going to get away from him. He's not allowed to get a push. He's in the pit lane. Need to get the rule book out here and see if he can get a push in the pit lane. He's trying to keep the engine running. It's all getting away from him here. Räikkönen, the marshals don't seem to want to help him. And, well, the chance to leave here as the world champion seems to have gone away. He was struggling like mad on those tyres out there. And they didn't bring him in, the McLaren team, any earlier. And this is the result of it. It looks like it's all going to be over. The rear wheels are still turning. You can see that right rear is down to the canvas. And
I don't understand why it went wide. It doesn't look that slippery. The mechanics can't go down and help him. They're not allowed past the white line at the beginning of the pit lane. Ted.
Utter frustration and despair down here at McLaren. The guys at the back of the garage have got their hands on their heads. The tyres that they brought out were in Alonso's covers, but they got Lewis's tyres as well, so they were ready. They'd seen it. They got on the radio. It worked, but in the Nürburgring, tell the marshals to actually push you, but it seems that the message just got lost in translation and couldn't let the Chinese marshals, but now they've got Alonso's tyres in the pit lane too. Distraught at McLaren here.
Well, as things stand, this is going to turn the World Championship on its head. Kimi Raikkonen is on target for 10 points. He's 17 behind Hamilton. So that would take it on to, as he comes into the pit lane, that would take this championship on to Brazil in 2 weeks' time, with Raikkonen 7 points behind Hamilton. If Alonso can finish second, however, he would be just 4 points behind Hamilton going into the Brazilian Grand Prix. It's all over for Lewis Hamilton in China. He will not leave here as world champion. And can Kimi Raikkonen win this race ahead of Fernando Alonso? Certainly had a big enough margin, certainly has the speed in the Ferrari, and both of these men, their world championship hopes are still alive. In comes the defending champion.
I think he could have had a right rear puncture, because curiously the left front was waving in the air, was Lewis Hamilton's car. It just looked odd, and he had no reason to be running wide there. I think that right rear tyre may just have failed for him. Yellow flag still waving at the top of the hill there in the final corner. We assume for Sutil's car, as Alonso regains the racetrack.
So Robert Kubica moves up into third place in the BMW. He's just set the fastest lap of anybody. And look at this battle here. This is Massa and Alonso.
Alonso on the harder tyres. Now, we saw them scrubbing some of these tyres in qualifying yesterday for exactly these conditions. But Alonso's got to work even harder to get those tyres up to temperature than Massa, who's been on track for a while now with them. So Massa surely has got a chance to seize that position as Alonso finds out where he's at.
Lewis Hamilton walks disconsolately back into the pits. He must have been almost crying when the car got beached in the gravel trap. And here's how he lost it.
Well, he was unsighted coming into the pit lane, and he just lost the back end of the car. He just caught it on the damp area on the way into the pit lane. I think because he was tucked up underneath the rear wing of the car, it was Trulli who just repassed him on dry tyres. And Lewis just got into the pit lane a little bit hot. It was me seeing the front left light was basically the car oversteering. Ron helplessly wanting to know what he can do to recover that car into the pit lane.
Robert Kubica in the BMW leads this Grand Prix. He's only made the one stop. It came at the perfect time. So he went onto the dry tyres at just the moment when he was planning to make his pit stop anyway. He's the one who's really won out of this. Kimi Raikkonen, who had made an earlier stop, of course, one of the two stoppers this afternoon. He has stopped twice. He's 3 seconds behind Kubica. Alonso is third, 11 seconds behind Raikkonen. And right behind Alonso is Felipe Massa.
And Kubica pulling off from the lead of the Grand Prix. And that's after the hairpin. Is that a technical problem? Seems that way. He's just coasting back to the pit lane. He's not trying to recover to the racetrack. So disaster for BMW and Robert Kubica. Vettel will have to yield surely. Buttons absolutely on the march. And it's P4.
This is the run down to turn one. Vettel deciding discretion the better part of Valor. Jenson Button holding on to fourth place. Liuzzi is sixth for Toro Rosso. Well, if it stays like this, the championship battle will go on to Brazil in 2 weeks' time, where Lewis Hamilton will have a 4-point lead over Fernando Alonso and a 7-point lead over Kimi Raikkonen, with 10 points available for a victory. So he's going to have to do it the hard way, is Lewis Hamilton.
Liuzzi and a flying Fisichella then for sixth place. Button got the gap down to Massa to just 9.4 seconds now, although Massa's beginning to speed up too. And Liuzzi looking right, because immediately off that turn 13, Fisichella has shot past him. Liuzzi with the Toro Rosso Ferrari. The Renault passes him down the straight, and away he goes. Fisichella up to P6.
Lewis Hamilton clearly very frustrated at what happened. He walks into the team garage. See his reaction to his mechanics. The arm round the shoulder technique from Norbert Haug. Tremendous frustration though for Hamilton. He seemed so positive, so confident this morning, and what a frustrating way for it to happen. It's the 4th time that Formula One has visited this circuit, and it's by far the most dramatic race so far. Lewis Hamilton went into it with a chance of emerging as world champion. He will not, because he is out of this race. And here's Lewis Hamilton with Louise Goodman.
Just explain for us, whose decision was it to stay out for so long?
Well, we're having a great race, and you know, we didn't know whether it was going to rain or not, and the tyres that I was on are just still getting worse and worse. And at the end, I could almost see the canvas underneath, and you know, coming into the pits, and it was like ice. I couldn't do anything about it. My mirrors were completely dirty, so I couldn't see through them, so I couldn't see my tyres. They just felt like they were completely finished, and I was coming in that lap, so it could have worked out perfectly. I think we would have had the pace in the dry. Unfortunate for the team. I'm sorry to the team. They did a fantastic job as always. And you know, but we've still got one more race to go, and don't worry, we can still do it. Obviously, when I got out of the car, I was just gutted, because I haven't made a mistake all year, and to do it on the way into the pit is you know, not something I usually do. But you know, you can't go through life without making mistakes, and I'm over it. Now I'm going to look on to Brazil, and I know the team are going to be working hard to make sure the car's quick enough there. So we've still got points in the back.
Total respect then for Lewis Hamilton taking the trouble, as always, to talk to us and not spit the dummy, not throw his toys out of the pram. And he's quite clearly positive mind management going on there, ready for Brazil.
And here is Kimi Räikkönen, always the most potent threat this weekend. He was the fastest man through all the practice sessions. He was fastest in the first and second parts of qualifying. And when Lewis Hamilton took the pole away from him yesterday, he acknowledged it was an awesome lap by Hamilton. But he also knew that he had perhaps a couple of laps more fuel in his Ferrari, and that he would still pose a major threat here this afternoon, as indeed it has turned out. Fernando Alonso, the critical thing from his point of view is that he's going to finish this race in front of the other Ferrari of Felipe Massa. That's a difference to Alonso of 2 World Championship points, and it means he lives on to fight this championship for another day. So, as Lewis Hamilton becomes a spectator. 1 lap to go, though, for Kimi Räikkönen, as Felipe Massa just sets the new fastest lap of the race, a 1:37.5. There is Jean Todt, who is about to welcome his driver, Kimi Räikkönen, to his 5th victory of the season. It will make him the driver who's won the most races of anybody in the field. And perhaps more importantly, from a marketing point of view for Ferrari, their 200th Grand Prix victory. So here comes Kimi Räikkönen to record his 14th career victory, his 4th, his 5th of this season, and a very important one that takes him through with the World Championship fight to Brazil in 2 weeks' time. Fernando Alonso is going to come through and finish in 2nd place. He too still has a very real chance of taking that World Championship crown away from Lewis Hamilton in Brazil. Massa finishes in 3rd. Well, this is the old Minardi team, and all of the mechanics are the same. They never achieved a result like this. 4th place for Sebastian Vettel, an absolutely outstanding drive. He feels like he's won it. His mechanics feel like they've won it. It's been an amazing performance, and what a recovery after the humiliation, there's no other word for it, of Fuji last weekend. Jenson Button comes through, a valiant 5th. Terrific drive from Jenson Button after losing ground at the start. And 6th is Liuzzi, 7th is...
Coulthard's going to do it in the back, look.
Coulthard at the back for the final World Championship point. Holds on from Heikki Kovalainen, who finishes 9th. So Coulthard picks up a point. Webber is 10th. What a race. The race started in the rain, it ended in the dry. It's been one of those 0 to 0 days where Lewis Hamilton did not score any points. Critical mover there, though, is Toro Rosso Ferrari. Look at them, up to 7th place in the Constructors, thanks to the amazing results of Vettel and Liuzzi. But it's a fantastic victory for Kimi Räikkönen ahead of Fernando Alonso.
Räikkönen, great drive. He sensed a victory and he went and took it.
Well, it was a Shanghai surprise for Lewis Hamilton. And now he's going to have to do it the hard way in Brazil in 2 weeks' time.
For sure it was tricky conditions, but you need to make best out of it, and it worked here very well. I think so. We had a very good package also in the last race. We were a bit unfortunate with this decision on the start, but no, I would say that was tricky, especially when we had very old rain tires and started to rain. But for me, it wasn't too bad. So.
I'm happy with the result of the race, because I've been very lucky with the retirement of Luis. But for the championship chance, I think it's still very difficult. I need to recover 4 points, and that with normal races we know how difficult it will be.
Sometimes in a race like that you need to take some gamble. I took maybe in the wrong time, but in the end, finished third. It was a good result. It was a good result for the team. Let's try to have a very nice battle in the last race, and hopefully try for win another time.
I think the conditions were absolutely brilliant for us. I had an amazing first corner, passed a lot of cars, and then the first stint, passed a couple of other cars again. I enjoyed so much the race.
In the wet, the car just wasn't working. Struggled massively on the first few laps of the car, and then the tyres were just overheating. I was down to 15th or 16th before I pitted. But on the grooves, the slick tyres, I loved it. It's a lot of fun, and it's nice picking people off when they're messing around.
I think with hindsight, we left him out at least a lap too long. I think his tyres were pretty worn, and the weather was very changeable at that time, and we were trying to make sure that we weren't taking any risks, that we were going to cover Kimi, but in the end we decided we had to come in at that stage. Frankly, it was about a lap too late.
It's the result that the many fans of Lewis Hamilton would have dreaded, but it's a result that sets up the final round winner-takes-all decider. Raikkonen from Alonso and Massa. A magnificent fourth for Sebastian Vettel after all his agonies at Fuji. Jenson Button's best of the season, then Lutzi and Heidfeld, and David Coulthard taking the last point for Red Bull. The Drivers' Championship, though, Lewis Hamilton still has a 4-point lead. Raikkonen has moved to within 7. And it all means that to take the title in Brazil, Hamilton, if he doesn't win, needs to finish second behind Alonso, or if Raikkonen wins, then Lewis needs to finish in the top 4. Constructors' Championship, of course, already won by Ferrari, but David Coulthard's single point for Red Bull this afternoon moves them to within 4 of Williams in their battle in the middle of that Constructors' Championship table. Well, Martin Brundle has joined Mark Blundell and myself to try to sum up what we've seen today and share Lewis Hamilton's disappointment, of course, especially after an absolutely textbook start in the first half of the race. He completely dominated.
Yes, he got away from pole position beautifully, got clear space into turn 1 and very much controlled the race from the front, didn't he? In the early stages, Alonso desperately trying to find a way past Massa and even Raikkonen in turns 2 and 3, but Hamilton out front had the track to himself.
But this was the race when a conservative approach could have eased him towards the championship, and from this point on, well, he was out in front, he was in charge, but then started taking a few risks in terms of tactics.
I think he just was going about his job as he's done every Grand Prix weekend, but maybe this race in particular, where he knew he had some advantage of the points lead, he could have just trimmed it back slightly. When he got into that battle with Raikkonen, I was quite surprised.
Why did he take that battle on, do you feel?
I think that's just the man's makeup. And I think he was slightly rattled by losing the lead to Kimi Raikkonen in difficult conditions. His tyres were getting very thin on rubber. He's running wide here onto the wet side of the track, so it's a double problem then. And away Raikkonen goes. And it's at this point, quite clearly, McLaren should have pulled him in for another set of tyres.
They were unlucky because he was on his way in. He got it wrong at the entrance to the pit lane. It could have all worked out pretty well.
I think he got it wrong, but to be honest with you, I think some of that was down to the fact that they put him under so much pressure. The guy should have been in, as Martin said, maybe a lap, 2 laps before, and at this point they put him under a huge amount of pressure. He just overcooked it coming into the pit lane. He's got grounded in the gravel there. Marshall tried to pull him out, but it was beached. Unfortunate. I don't really understand why they should have done what they did. I think Bridgestone would have probably recommended to him when they saw that delamination on the tyre, they must change the tyres. Went on for 1 or 2 laps when I saw the tyres in that state.
Sets up a huge battle, of course, in Brazil, but this is so frustrating because this was his big opportunity.
It was. He goes to the final race with a 4-point lead in the championship, but then so did Eddie Irvine against Mika Hakkinen back in '99, I think it was. But Lewis really impressed me after the race. His immediate response was, I can still do it. He had the state of mind to come out, talk to Louise and give us his view of what was going on. And it seemed to me that his mind management was very much intact despite the massive disappointment.
And that's his great strength, and that's the strength he needs coming into Sao Paulo in 2 weeks' time.
Definitely, I think that's a strength he's shown all season long. And, you know, as you said, Martin said 4 points ahead. Yes, Raikkonen's on the game. Alonso's, you know, chipping away at his heels. But Lewis has the advantage psychologically, and I still feel in terms of behind the wheel, he's still one of the quickest guys out there on the track.
Three-way battle for the title then, and you both would still favour Lewis, would you?
I think Alonso must go as favourite to Brazil in many respects because he knows the place so well. He's won 2 World Championships at that circuit. He's in a territory he's very comfortable with. In a way, I think Lewis goes slightly as the underdog, having never been to the circuit. So we'll wait and see.
Mark?
I'll go with the underdog because, you know, now and again you see the two guys going to battle in the ring and the underdog comes out on top, and that for me needs to be Lewis Hamilton.
I feel it's the year of the underdog, although it wasn't the year of the underdog here in China today. Mark Martin, thanks very much indeed. Just before we go tonight, here's your last chance at our ITV F1 competition.
This weekend we're giving you and a friend a chance to be one of the first visitors to the Singapore Formula One street circuit. The inaugural night race on the 28th of September next year uses existing roads and some new sections currently under construction. You'll get to see the downtown circuit before anybody else in the Formula One world. You and a friend will be flown to Singapore at the beginning of next year. Stay 3 nights in a 5-star hotel in the centre of this vibrant city. Have a private VIP tour of the proposed street circuit, plus a Singapore city tour. To be in with a chance of winning this fantastic prize, just answer this question. Which continent is Singapore in? Is it A, Asia, B, Africa, or C, Europe? The number to call is 0901 293 2020 or text F1 plus your answer A, B or C to 63337. Calls cost £1 per entry from a BT landline. Calls from other networks and mobiles may be higher. Text will cost £1 plus the standard network rate. Entrance must be 18 or over. Cable and satellite viewers can press the red button and lines close at 6 p.m. on Thursday the 18th of October.
Good luck with that, and now we look forward to the first 3-way shootout for the Formula One World Championship title since Australia in 1986. You may recall that's when Nigel Mansell's tyre blew in spectacular fashion when he was heading for the title. We wish Lewis Hamilton much better luck than that. It's the Brazilian Grand Prix, winner takes all, in 2 weeks' time. Right.